It was a bright afternoon in the city, and the streets were filled with the usual chaos: taxis honking, people rushing, and the occasional street performer trying to catch attention. Among all this, a young girl named Amina walked slowly, her small frame hunched slightly against the cool breeze. Her stomach grumbled, reminding her that she hadn't eaten much that morning. Money was scarce, and even the thought of buying a simple meal felt like a distant dream. Amina's eyes scanned the shops, the food stalls and the cafes where people sat comfortably, sipping coffee or enjoying sandwiches. She paused in front of a luxurious hotel, its shiny glass doors reflecting the sunlight. Inside, everything seemed so orderly, so peaceful, and so out of reach. The smell of fresh bread and baked pastries wafted out through the open doors, teasing her senses and making her stomach ache even more. She hesitated, feeling nervous about approaching such a place. But hunger paired with a quiet courage gave her the courage to step closer. Inside the hotel lobby, the contrast was striking. Polished floors, elegant furniture, and people dressed in fine clothing moved gracefully around the space. The concierge greeted guests with polite smiles, and the soft hum of conversation filled the air. Amina looked around, feeling small and out of place. She knew she didn't belong there, yet she couldn't turn away from the smell of food that seemed to float from the cafe area. Sitting at a corner table near the window was a man who immediately drew attention without trying. He had a presence that was impossible to ignore. His tailored suit, the confident way he moved, and the quiet authority he exuded made it clear that he was someone powerful, someone important. He was a billionaire, a man accustomed to getting what he wanted without question, but at that moment he was focused on a document in front of him, scribbling notes and occasionally glancing at his phone. His world seemed contained, organized, and untouchable. Amina, after a moment of hesitation, walked closer to the cafe counter. She cleared her throat softly, trying to appear polite despite the nervousness that made her hands shake. She looked at the young man behind the counter, who smiled kindly but professionally. Her voice was small but clear as she asked a simple question. "Excuse me, sir, could I please have something small to eat? I haven't had breakfast and I only have a little money." The young man behind the counter blinked, taken aback. Usually requests like this were rare in a place where patrons had plenty. He glanced toward the luxurious seating area, then back at Amina. She wasn't asking for much, just a simple sandwich or a piece of fruit, yet her words carried honesty, humility, and a quiet dignity that caught his attention. At that moment, the billionaire looked up from his documents, his eyes meeting Amina's. There was a brief flicker of surprise on his face. He had seen plenty of people in the city, but rarely did someone approach the hotel so politely with such straightforward honesty. For a moment he paused, his pen hovering over his papers. Something about her presence, her voice, and her courage made him put aside his work and simply observe her. Amina noticed the pause and felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. She wondered if she had said something wrong or if she had offended the atmosphere of the hotel just by being there. Her stomach growled again, reminding her that her question was not just polite. It was urgent. Yet she kept her composure, standing tall despite her hunger and the unfamiliar surroundings. The billionaire, after a moment, leaned back in his chair and studied her. He could see the hunger in her eyes, but he also saw her strength, her determination, and the honesty that radiated in her simple words. He had everything money could buy: luxury, influence, power. But something in this small, humble question made him pause and think. He realized that in all his years of success, he rarely encountered such unfiltered courage. He spoke finally, his voice calm but curious. "You came all the way here to ask for food?" he asked, not in a judgmental tone but in one that held genuine interest. "Why didn't you go somewhere closer?" Amina's eyes met his and she answered honestly. "I don't have much money and I wanted something safe and clean. I didn't want trouble or to take too much, I needed a little food." Her words were simple, but they resonated. The billionaire leaned back, feeling a twinge of something he hadn't felt in years: concern, compassion, perhaps even a sense of responsibility. He glanced around, noting the people who ignored her, the staff who looked at her but kept moving. Then he looked back at Amina and made a decision. "Wait here," he said, standing and walking toward the cafe counter. He spoke to the young man quietly, and within moments a small meal, a sandwich, a piece of fruit, and a glass of water was brought to her. Amina's eyes widened and she looked up at the billionaire with a shy, grateful smile. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely above the hum of the lobby. The billionaire nodded, feeling a strange warmth he hadn't expected. He returned to his table but kept glancing at her from time to time. Something about the simplicity of the moment, the honesty in her voice, the dignity in her request, and her gratitude for a small kindness, stirred something deep within him. He realized that in his world of wealth and influence, he rarely experienced such unfiltered human emotion. Amina ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it were a rare treasure. She looked around occasionally, absorbing the beauty of the lobby, the polite smiles of the staff, and the quiet energy of the place. Yet she never forgot to look back at the billionaire, the man who had acknowledged her courage and responded with unexpected kindness. She didn't know his full story, and she didn't need to. For her, this simple act of receiving a meal in a safe, welcoming environment was transformative. The billionaire, on the other hand, was thinking about much more than the meal he had provided. He reflected on his life, the business deals, the endless meetings, the constant pursuit of more wealth and influence. Yet here was a young girl standing on her own, honest and courageous, reminding him of values he had long neglected: humility, empathy, and human connection. He found himself drawn to her presence, not just because of what she represented in terms of vulnerability, but because of the quiet strength and dignity she carried despite hardship. As the afternoon sun streamed through the hotel windows, Amina finished her meal. She wiped her hands carefully on a napkin and gave the billionaire one last look, a look filled with gratitude and quiet acknowledgement. She didn't know if she would ever see him again, but in that brief encounter, something shifted. The billionaire too felt a change. His heart, usually focused on numbers and deals, had opened slightly, touched by the courage and honesty of a simple question from a hungry girl. The encounter ended quietly. Amina stepped out of the hotel, her stomach no longer empty, her heart lighter. She continued on her path, not knowing that this simple interaction would ripple far beyond her imagination. The billionaire returned to his documents, but he could not ignore the impact of the moment. For the first time in years, he found himself thinking beyond profits and power. He wondered about the lives of those he passed every day, the people whose struggles were invisible to him, and the small, meaningful ways he could make a difference. That day, a small act, a simple question from a hungry girl, had done more than fill a stomach. It had awakened a sense of humanity in a man who had everything, reminding him that true richness lay not in wealth but in connection, empathy, and the courage to act with kindness. Both Amina and the billionaire walked away changed, unknowingly beginning a journey that would alter both their lives forever. The next morning, the city buzzed with life as usual, but the billionaire found himself unsettled. The memory of Amina's simple question lingered in his mind, refusing to be pushed aside by meetings or emails. He couldn't stop thinking about her courage, her dignity, and the honest way she had asked for help. For a man accustomed to controlling every aspect of his world, this small encounter with an ordinary girl had shaken something inside him. He decided to find her. It wasn't about publicity or image. It was about understanding, about connecting with someone whose presence had reminded him of a simpler, more human side of life. He returned to the hotel cafe, observing the staff and the regular guests, hoping to catch a glimpse of the girl who had unknowingly left such an impression on him. Meanwhile, Amina was back on the streets carrying her small bag and thinking about the day before. She felt a sense of pride in how she had approached the hotel and asked for help, but she also felt cautious. Life had taught her to be careful with strangers, especially those with influence or wealth. She moved with quiet confidence, navigating the city with the careful awareness that came from having to rely on herself from a young age. The billionaire noticed her almost immediately when she walked into the cafe that morning. She stood out, not because of what she wore or how she looked, but because of her calm presence and the quiet way she carried herself. He approached her gently, careful not to startle her, and greeted her with a warm smile. "Good morning," he said softly. "I hope you don't mind me coming here." "I wanted to see you again." Amina looked up, a little surprised. She studied his face, noticing the kindness in his eyes, and nodded. "Good morning. You don't need to do that," she said politely, though her curiosity was piqued. "I wasn't expecting to see you again." He shook his head. "I couldn't stop thinking about yesterday. You asked a simple question, but it made me realize I've been missing something important. I want to understand, to help if I can, but only in ways that respect you." Amina considered his words carefully. She had grown up navigating a world where people with power often assumed they could impose their will. Yet something about his tone felt different, genuine and thoughtful. Slowly she spoke. "Thank you. That means a lot. It's hard sometimes, but I try to stay honest and polite, even when things are tough." Over the next few hours, they began talking. The billionaire listened as Amina described her life, the struggles of her family, the challenges of finding steady meals, and the small joys she clung to despite hardship. She spoke openly about her dreams, simple ones like finishing her education, learning a trade, or helping her younger siblings. Her words were honest, unfiltered, and filled with a quiet determination that he found both inspiring and humbling. The billionaire shared parts of his own life too, not in a way that highlighted his wealth or accomplishments, but in a way that revealed his loneliness and the pressures he faced. He talked about the sacrifices he had made, the relationships that suffered, and the sense of emptiness that success sometimes brought. Amina listened, nodding thoughtfully without judgment or awe, offering the simplest, most human response: attention and empathy. Their conversation created a connection neither of them had expected. Amina felt seen not just for her struggles but for her strength and character. The billionaire, in turn, felt something he hadn't felt in years. A genuine bond formed through honesty, empathy, and mutual respect. It was a rare moment, stripped of pretense, wealth, or social expectation. As days passed, their interactions became more frequent. The billionaire began offering small, thoughtful gestures of support. Sometimes it was a meal or a warm coat. Other times it was advice or encouragement for Amina to pursue her education. She accepted his help gracefully, never demanding more than she needed and always expressing sincere gratitude. His heart, once focused on profit and power, was slowly opening to compassion, understanding, and the importance of using his resources to make a real difference. The staff at the hotel began to notice the change as well. They saw him engaging with the girl differently than he engaged with others. There was patience in his tone, attentiveness in his actions, and a curiosity that had been absent before. Some were intrigued, others skeptical, but all could sense that something had shifted. Amina's influence went beyond the billionaire. His perspective on life, people, and priorities began to evolve. He started to see the world through her eyes, recognizing struggles he had never considered, and realizing that empathy and kindness were more powerful than any deal or contract he had ever made. Small acts, like ensuring she had food or helping with her studies, were transforming him in ways that even he didn't fully understand yet. One afternoon, as they walked through a small park near the city, Amina paused and looked around. "You know," she said quietly, "most people never stop to see what others really need. They just walk past, busy with their own lives." The billionaire nodded thoughtfully. "I see that now, and I realize how much I've missed. You've shown me a perspective I hadn't considered, and it's enlightening. It makes me want to do more than I ever have before." Amina smiled faintly. "I don't need much, just understanding and fairness. But it means the world when someone notices, when someone cares." He realized that the simplest lessons were often the most profound. A simple question from a hungry girl had led to a deep, human connection that challenged his long-held assumptions about life, success, and happiness. He found himself planning small ways to create meaningful change, not for recognition but because it felt right. Over time, he introduced her to mentors, educational opportunities, and experiences that were previously out of reach. Amina approached these with humility and eagerness, always learning, always grateful. The billionaire observed her growth with quiet pride, realizing that her courage and honesty were shaping not only her future, but also his own perspective on life. Their friendship continued to deepen. They shared stories, laughed, and sometimes sat in comfortable silence. Each interaction was a lesson for both. Amina learned about resilience, problem-solving, and the complexities of life. The billionaire learned about compassion, empathy, and the transformative power of genuine human connection. In the end, what began as a simple question from a hungry girl had evolved into something far greater. It was a bond that transcended social status, wealth, and background. It was a lesson in humanity, kindness, and the potential within each small act to change hearts and lives. Both Amina and the billionaire were no longer the same people they had been before that first meeting, and neither would forget the impact of that seemingly ordinary day that had sparked an extraordinary journey. As the days turned into weeks, the relationship between Amina and the billionaire continued to grow in unexpected ways. What had begun as a simple encounter over a meal was now evolving into a deeper understanding of life and compassion. The billionaire found himself looking forward to seeing her, not for status or curiosity, but because her presence reminded him of the parts of life he had long ignored: simple joy, human connection, and the courage to face challenges with dignity. One morning, he invited Amina to the hotel for a small breakfast. The staff, already familiar with their interactions, served her quietly, treating her with respect. She had grown comfortable enough to accept these gestures without feeling overwhelmed or out of place. As she ate, she talked about her hopes for the future, how she wanted to continue learning, and the small dreams she cherished despite the struggles of daily life. The billionaire listened carefully, asking questions and offering guidance in ways that respected her independence. He did not impose, nor did he treat her as someone to pity. Instead, he sought to understand her world, learning from her resilience and perspective. Each conversation became an exchange of ideas, lessons, and laughter. He found that her courage in facing life's hardships without bitterness or complaint was a lesson in itself, one that no amount of wealth could teach. Amina, in turn, began to see the billionaire as more than a figure of immense power. She saw him as a human being capable of change, someone who could learn from her just as she could learn from him. It was a mutual respect built on honesty and understanding, far removed from societal expectations or material wealth. She was not afraid to ask questions, to express her thoughts, or to challenge his assumptions in a gentle, thoughtful manner. One day, during a walk in a quiet park near the city, the billionaire noticed a small group of children struggling with basic necessities. He paused, watching them, and then turned to Amina. "You know," he said quietly, "seeing them reminds me of how easily life can be unfair, and yet you approach it with such courage. I want to help more people, not just you." Amina nodded thoughtfully. "Even small actions matter. A meal, a place to study, a little guidance. These things can change someone's day, their perspective, their future. It doesn't have to be big to be meaningful." Inspired by her words, the billionaire began making small, deliberate efforts to help others. He funded educational programs, arranged for food donations, and provided opportunities for young people in the community. Each act was deliberate, thoughtful, and respectful of those receiving assistance. He learned that helping was not about showing power or gaining recognition. It was about listening, understanding, and acting with empathy. The staff at the hotel began to notice the change in him more profoundly. They saw a billionaire who was no longer solely focused on business deals and profit margins, but who genuinely cared about the lives he touched. His demeanor softened, his interactions became warmer, and the hotel itself reflected this shift in atmosphere. Guests sensed the kindness in the environment, and staff felt inspired to contribute their best, knowing their work had meaning beyond the ordinary. Amina's influence extended beyond mere guidance or support. She became a symbol of courage, showing the billionaire and those around him that resilience, honesty, and humility were more powerful than wealth or status. She navigated her own challenges with grace, never losing sight of her values, and that quiet strength left a lasting impression on everyone she encountered. One afternoon, they visited a local school together. The billionaire had arranged for supplies and support, but it was Amina who spoke to the children with genuine warmth and understanding. She shared her story, encouraged them to pursue their dreams despite difficulties, and demonstrated that courage and honesty could open doors to opportunities previously unimaginable. The billionaire watched quietly, moved by her ability to inspire others without any pretense or grandeur. He realized that her influence was transforming him from the inside out. His priorities shifted from accumulation and status to understanding and meaningful action. He started asking himself questions he had never considered. How could he use his resources to make a real difference? What values were truly important? How could he leave a lasting positive impact on the world? Amina's perspective was refreshing. She taught him that wealth and influence were tools, not ends in themselves. They could be used to empower, to uplift, and to create opportunities for those who had none. Her courage and humility reminded him of the potential for goodness in people, even in a world often dominated by greed and self-interest. The billionaire began making strategic, thoughtful plans to expand his philanthropic efforts. He invested in community programs, educational scholarships, and initiatives that addressed hunger and poverty. But these were not impersonal acts. He sought Amina's input, valuing her perspective and understanding that those living the challenges could provide insights he would never have considered. Together they worked to ensure that their actions were meaningful, sustainable, and respectful. As the weeks passed, their bond deepened. It was not a bond of dependency, but one of mutual respect, learning, and shared purpose. The billionaire found himself more patient, empathetic, and aware of the lives he influenced. He discovered joy in small gestures, feeding a hungry child, helping a struggling student, or simply listening to someone's story. And it was Amina, through her courage and simple honesty, who had illuminated this path for him. Amina also grew in confidence and perspective. She had always faced life with resilience, but the opportunities she now had, education, mentorship, and the support of someone who believed in her, opened new horizons. She realized that her simple courage, her willingness to speak honestly, and her respect for others had created real change, not only in her life but in the life of someone who held immense power and influence. One evening, as they walked through a quiet street after visiting a community center, the billionaire spoke softly. "You've taught me more than I can say. A simple question, a simple act of honesty, something I might have dismissed, has changed the way I see the world. I feel more alive, more connected, more human." Amina smiled, her eyes reflecting humility and warmth. "I didn't know I could make a difference, but I'm glad if I did. Sometimes we don't realize the impact of our actions, especially when we try to be honest and kind." The billionaire nodded, understanding fully. He had spent years accumulating wealth and influence, yet it was this simple, courageous girl who had opened his heart. He realized that change could begin in the smallest of ways: a question, a moment of honesty, an act of courage. And he knew that this was only the beginning of a journey that would shape both their lives in profound ways. By the end of part 3, the billionaire was no longer the same man who had first encountered Amina. His heart had begun to change, guided by her courage and perspective. Their relationship, built on respect, empathy, and shared purpose, was transforming not just him but the lives of others as well. A simple question from a hungry girl had sparked a ripple effect, showing that the smallest acts of honesty and courage could indeed change hearts forever. Months had passed since that first encounter at the hotel cafe, and both Amina and the billionaire had grown in ways neither could have imagined. Their bond had evolved from a simple act of kindness into a partnership rooted in understanding, empathy, and shared purpose. The billionaire, once consumed by business and wealth, was now more attentive, reflective, and inspired by Amina's courage and humility. Amina, in turn, had gained confidence, opportunities, and hope for a future that once seemed impossible. One morning, the billionaire invited Amina to accompany him to a meeting with community leaders. The purpose was simple yet profound: to find ways to help local families struggling with food, education, and basic necessities. Amina was hesitant at first, feeling out of place among influential adults and business people, but the billionaire reassured her, emphasizing that her perspective was important. He valued her experience, insight, and honesty, and he wanted those voices heard. As they entered the conference room, Amina noticed the surprise on the faces of the community leaders. They were expecting the billionaire to arrive alone, focused on presentations and numbers. Instead, he had brought a young girl who, with quiet confidence, shared her personal experiences and the challenges faced by people in her community. Her voice was steady, her words sincere, and her honesty undeniable. She spoke not as a victim, but as someone who had faced hardship and had the courage to ask for help when needed. The billionaire watched her carefully, proud of her ability to articulate the struggles she and many others endured. Her perspective added depth to the discussion, grounding it in reality rather than abstract statistics. The leaders listened intently, taking notes and asking questions, acknowledging the authenticity she brought to the table. The billionaire realized that this collaboration, born from a simple question months ago, was already making a tangible difference. After the meeting, the billionaire and Amina walked through a nearby park, discussing ways to implement the initiatives they had planned. They talked about organizing food drives, educational programs, and mentorship opportunities for children and young adults. Amina suggested approaches that were practical and sustainable, rooted in real-life experience rather than theory. The billionaire absorbed her insights, understanding that meaningful change required listening, patience, and respect for those directly affected. One afternoon, they visited a local shelter that provided food and temporary accommodation for families in need. Amina led the way, introducing the staff and sharing her observations about what could be improved. She spoke with humility and tact, highlighting both the strengths and the gaps in the shelter's support. The billionaire, inspired by her clarity and compassion, quietly took notes, already thinking about how he could contribute resources and influence to make the necessary improvements. During their visit, a young boy approached Amina shyly, asking if she would help him with his schoolwork. She smiled warmly and agreed, kneeling to explain a simple math problem. The billionaire observed the interaction silently, realizing that true impact often came from small personal gestures. It wasn't just about funding or programs. It was about connecting with individuals, understanding their needs, and giving them the tools and confidence to succeed. As the weeks went by, the billionaire's commitment to meaningful change deepened. He allocated funds to improve local schools, provide scholarships, and support community initiatives. But he did so with a new understanding, listening to those affected, valuing their input, and ensuring that efforts were respectful, practical, and empowering. Amina remained at his side, guiding, advising, and offering perspectives that he could never have gained from a boardroom alone. The billionaire also began to notice changes in himself. His mornings, once filled with relentless schedules and meetings, now included time to connect with the community and reflect on the day's impact. He found joy in seeing others flourish, in witnessing small acts of kindness ripple into broader change. And he recognized that it had all begun with a single, simple question from a courageous girl who had dared to ask for help. Amina's life continued to transform as well. With the billionaire's mentorship and support, she pursued her education more rigorously, attended workshops, and learned skills that would empower her to achieve long-term stability. Yet she never lost her humility or her sense of empathy. She remembered the struggles that had shaped her, the hunger that had driven her to ask a simple question, and the importance of kindness and understanding in every interaction. She knew that her journey was not just about her own success. It was about creating opportunities and inspiring hope for others facing similar challenges. One evening, as they walked through the city streets together, the billionaire paused and spoke thoughtfully. "You've changed more than just my perspective. You've shown me that real wealth is not measured in money or power, but in the lives we touch and the difference we make." Amina smiled quietly. "I never imagined that asking a simple question could lead to this. I just wanted a meal that day, but I'm glad it led to something bigger, for you, for me, and for others who need help." The billionaire nodded, understanding fully. He had spent years pursuing wealth and influence, yet it was the honesty and courage of one young girl that had awakened his humanity. He realized that change often begins in unexpected ways, and that even the smallest acts of courage and kindness can create lasting impact. Their collaboration grew stronger, extending beyond the city. They started initiatives in neighboring communities, always ensuring that local voices were heard and respected. The billionaire learned to step back, letting those affected take the lead, while Amina guided him with insight, empathy, and practicality. Together, they built a model of empowerment and compassion that inspired others in the business and philanthropic worlds. As the months continued, the billionaire became known not just for his wealth, but for his genuine commitment to meaningful change. His transformation was visible to everyone around him, and it sparked curiosity and admiration. People began to understand that his actions were inspired not by image or recognition, but by the simple, courageous question of a girl who had asked for help and treated life with honesty and dignity. Amina, too, became a symbol of resilience and hope. Her story circulated quietly, inspiring those who heard it to believe in the power of honesty, courage, and human connection. She continued her studies, pursued her goals, and remained deeply committed to helping others in her community. Her impact was growing steadily, proving that even small voices, when guided by courage and integrity, could influence powerful people and create meaningful change. By the end of part 4, the billionaire and Amina had built a partnership that was transformative in every sense. Their relationship was no longer about a single act of kindness. It had become a movement grounded in empathy, mutual respect, and the desire to create lasting impact. A simple question asked with honesty and courage had ignited a journey that was changing lives' hearts, and the very way people approach the idea of wealth, power, and responsibility. As the months passed, the relationship between Amina and the billionaire grew into something far greater than either had anticipated. What had begun as a simple act of kindness had transformed into a journey of mutual growth, impact, and inspiration. The billionaire had learned the profound value of empathy, humility, and listening, while Amina had gained opportunities, confidence, and the knowledge that her courage could truly make a difference. One morning, the billionaire called Amina to his office. The room, usually dominated by contracts and numbers, now felt lighter, filled with a sense of purpose. He spoke with a calm determination. "Amina, I've been thinking. We've done so much together for the community, but I feel there's something more we can do. I want to give you the chance to lead a project, a place where people like you can feel supported, safe, and inspired." Amina listened carefully, her heart racing. She had always dreamed of making a lasting impact, but this was beyond anything she could have imagined. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "It's a huge responsibility." He shook his head gently. "I don't see it as a responsibility. I see it as an opportunity. You've shown courage, compassion, and integrity from the very beginning. I want you to use those qualities to guide this project. You'll have support, resources, and freedom to make it meaningful." Amina's mind raced as she considered the possibilities. She could create a place that offered education, mentorship, and basic necessities to children and families in need. She could ensure that no one felt ignored or unsupported, just as she had once been when hunger drove her to ask a simple question. Her heart swelled with purpose, and she nodded slowly. "I will do it," she said, her voice firm but humble. "I'll do everything I can to help." Over the following weeks, they worked tirelessly to establish a new community center. The billionaire provided the funding, infrastructure, and connections, but it was Amina's vision that shaped every detail. She designed programs that addressed education, nutrition, and personal development. She consulted with families to understand their needs, ensuring that the center would serve real, meaningful purposes. Her perspective grounded the project in reality, making it practical and sustainable. On the day the center opened, there was a palpable sense of excitement in the air. Families arrived curious and hopeful. Amina greeted each one with a warm smile, listening carefully to their stories and offering support. The billionaire watched quietly, feeling a deep sense of pride and fulfillment. He realized that the greatest wealth he had ever possessed was not his money or influence, but the ability to make a lasting difference in lives like these. Children ran through the classrooms, exploring the new books, materials, and resources that had been provided. Young adults attended workshops on skills and careers, guided by mentors who shared Amina's values of patience, kindness, and perseverance. Families received assistance and guidance, learning that their challenges could be addressed with understanding and practical solutions. It was a community transformed, not by charity alone, but by empowerment and respect. As the weeks turned into months, the center flourished under Amina's leadership. Her approach remained grounded in humility and empathy, and the impact was visible in the smiles, the gratitude, and the confidence of those she helped. The billionaire continued to support her, but he had also learned to step back, allowing her to lead with independence and creativity. Their partnership had evolved into one of mutual respect and shared purpose, a powerful example of how courage and empathy could change lives. One evening, as they walked through the bustling streets near the center, the billionaire reflected aloud. "I never imagined that one simple question could lead to all of this. You've not only changed my life, but the lives of countless others." Amina smiled, her eyes reflecting both humility and pride. "I only asked a question because I had to. I never expected it to change so much, but I'm glad it did. It shows that honesty, courage, and kindness can ripple far beyond what we imagine." The billionaire nodded, understanding fully. He had spent years accumulating wealth, influence, and status, but it was the simple, genuine courage of one girl that had transformed his perspective, priorities, and heart. He realized that real success was not measured in dollars or deals, but in the lives we touch and the positive change we create. Word of the center's impact spread, inspiring other philanthropists and business leaders to take notice. People saw the effectiveness of empathy-driven initiatives, guided by those who truly understood the needs of the community. Amina's story became a quiet symbol of courage, humility, and the transformative power of a single, honest act. The billionaire and Amina continued to collaborate, expanding their reach to nearby neighborhoods and towns. Each new initiative followed the same principles: listening first, acting with empathy, and ensuring that those affected had a voice in shaping the outcome. Their work was not about recognition, but about making a meaningful difference, creating opportunities, and empowering those who had been overlooked or ignored. Over time, the billionaire noticed profound changes within himself. He had learned patience, humility, and the value of genuine connection. He had discovered joy in small acts of kindness, fulfillment in empowering others, and purpose beyond profit and status. And he knew that it had all begun with a simple question from a hungry girl, asked with courage and honesty, and answered with dignity and respect. Amina's journey continued as well. She grew into a leader, mentor, and inspiration for others. Her courage, once seen in a small act of asking for help, now extended to guiding and uplifting entire communities. She never forgot the struggles that had shaped her, and she remained committed to creating opportunities for those facing similar challenges. Her life had been transformed, but she had also become a force for transformation in the lives of countless others. By the end of Part 5, the billionaire and Amina had built a legacy together. Their partnership was a testament to the power of empathy, courage, and human connection. It proved that even the smallest acts, like asking a simple question, could ignite change, transform hearts, and create lasting impact. They had shown that wealth and influence, when guided by humility and compassion, could become instruments of empowerment, hope, and real-world transformation. Months had turned into a year since Amina first walked into the hotel cafe with a simple question that would unknowingly change the course of her life and the billionaire's heart. By now, their collaboration had become more than a partnership. It was a shared mission. The community center, once just an idea, had grown into a beacon of hope, touching hundreds of lives and inspiring countless others. Amina had matured into a confident leader. Her days were filled with planning, mentoring, and overseeing initiatives that ensured every individual who came to the center felt valued, supported, and capable of achieving their dreams. She had learned to navigate challenges with patience, to balance ambition with humility, and to lead with empathy. Every step of the journey reminded her of the moment she had asked a question, hungry and unsure, and how that courage had opened doors she never knew existed. The billionaire, too, had transformed. His approach to life, business, and wealth had been forever altered. He had discovered fulfillment not in acquisitions or accolades, but in creating opportunities and impacting lives positively. He now spent a significant portion of his time working alongside Amina, not to control, but to support and learn from her perspective. He found joy in her insights and admired her unwavering dedication to others. One morning, the billionaire and Amina sat in a quiet room at the center, reviewing the impact of the projects they had initiated over the past months. Children had learned new skills, families were more secure, and a spirit of hope had taken root in the community. They both felt a sense of accomplishment, but more importantly, they were inspired to continue expanding their reach. Each success story reminded them that the smallest actions could have enormous consequences. "Look at this," Amina said, showing a report of children who had started attending school regularly because of the support provided. These kids now have a chance to learn, to grow, to dream. And it all began because someone cared enough to listen and act. The billionaire nodded, a quiet smile on his face. "It's incredible. I never imagined that one simple question, one honest moment, could ripple into something this meaningful. And it's you who made it happen." Amina's eyes sparkled with humility. "I only acted on what I believed was right. But your support made it possible. Without the resources, the reach, and the willingness to trust my perspective, it would have remained just an idea." Together, they decided to take the next step, expanding the model to other neighborhoods and cities. They began identifying areas where children lacked access to education, families struggled with food insecurity, and opportunities were scarce. Amina led the planning, speaking with locals, understanding their needs, and designing programs that were culturally sensitive, practical, and empowering. The billionaire facilitated the expansion, ensuring funding, resources, and administrative support were available. Yet he always deferred to her judgment, recognizing that her first-hand experience was invaluable. Their collaboration began drawing attention. Local media highlighted their work, portraying Amina not as a celebrity but as a symbol of courage, resilience, and empathy. The billionaire, once known solely for his wealth, became recognized for his genuine commitment to change, guided by a young woman who had shown that honesty and courage could open hearts and transform lives. One afternoon, during a visit to one of the new centers in a neighboring city, a young girl approached Amina timidly. She held a small notebook and asked if Amina could help her write a story. Amina knelt down and smiled warmly, guiding the girl patiently, encouraging her creativity and listening to every word. The billionaire watched, silently realizing that this was the true essence of impact: personal attention, genuine care, and the power of connection. Later, as they walked through the streets, the billionaire spoke quietly. "You've taught me more than I could ever have learned from books or business. Your courage, your honesty, and your empathy have reshaped not only my life but the lives of so many others." Amina looked at him, her expression calm but determined. "We've done a lot, yes, but there's still so much more to do. We just have to keep listening, keep acting, and remember why we started. Every small action matters." That evening, as the sun set over the city, both reflected on the journey they had undertaken. A simple question, asked in a moment of need, had sparked a movement of hope and empowerment. The billionaire, once isolated in wealth and privilege, had discovered the transformative power of empathy and human connection. Amina, once a girl unsure of her place in the world, had grown into a leader capable of inspiring change on a large scale. In the following months, their initiatives continued to expand, touching more lives and inspiring others to act. Amina trained a team of young leaders, teaching them the principles of empathy, courage, and integrity. She encouraged them to listen deeply, act with humility, and understand that true leadership was not about authority, but about service and empowerment. Each new center became a hub of hope, learning, and opportunity. The billionaire, witnessing the impact of her work, realized that his greatest legacy would not be his wealth, his companies, or his influence, but the lives transformed through collaboration, compassion, and the courage of one simple question. He continued to provide support, but he also grew as a person, learning to value relationships, understand struggles he had never faced, and embrace the profound responsibility that comes with influence. By the end of Part 6, Amina had truly become more than a catalyst for change. She had become a symbol of what courage, honesty, and empathy could achieve. The billionaire, forever changed by her example, had found a new purpose in life, guided by her perspective and inspired by her leadership. Together, they had created a legacy of hope, empowerment, and meaningful impact, proving that even the smallest actions, when grounded in integrity and care, could change lives forever. And it all began with a simple question, asked with courage, that changed the course of 2 lives and countless others in ways no one could have imagined.